the we stall a lot of the efforts specifically in the courts, and eventually when we win, it is deemed completely illegal. So I want to highlight that. We also want to highlight the fact that we have tried to make it as clear as possible with Know Your Rights efforts, that an administrative warrant is not a judicial warrant, and just again educating people on that. Uh, some people will assume that our laws don't mean anything, and sanctuary status, even from Trump 1.0, did not have an effect. And I always like to highlight this particular fact. Number one, if you take the amount of the immigrant population in California, it is higher, foreign born as well as any type of immigration status. It is higher than most other states. And I will reference it to Texas, right? Foreign born residents, we have almost 11 million individuals, whereas Texas has roughly about 6 million, right? Per percentage, we also have a significant percentage. And our sanctuary policies, and I'm going to put that in a bucket to, talk about immigration, all statuses, protecting, not working with ICE, you name it, actually has a huge effect. So from January of 2025, when Trump got into office, and we knew that there was going to be a massive effort for ICE to do their job, versus so California versus Texas again. So from January 2025 to roughly about September 2025, we saw roughly about 8,000 plus individuals in California be removed, right? Whereas in Texas, it is estimated, they don't have a clear estimated number, but it is estimated to be roughly about 3.5 to 4 times as much as California, even though we have a larger immigrant target population. And the reason for that is because of the fact that we make it very, very hard for ICE to conduct their operations here. We don't allow them on any state facility. We do not have our law enforcement work with ICE. We do not give them anybody that has been detained that may have a criminal record or be undocumented to ICE agents, and much more. And so that has a trickle down effect throughout every city, every county. But I also want to just highlight the fact that we're talking about 8,000 people potentially being removed in almost a year, whereas Texas literally had almost 4 times as much as we did, right? Nearly 30,000 individuals, right? And not all of them are undocumented. Less than 10% are seen as having a actual crime or convicted of a crime. And I have stated many, many times that our country allows for due process for every single person that is within our borders. And so I do just want to highlight a couple of those things. With that said, we have given about $10 million for immigration related services to provide removal defense. That also includes children. I specifically want to highlight the CHIRP funding because that allows kids who are under the age of 18, including toddlers, okay, and I really want to highlight this, to have a lawyer and a social worker actually help them through the process because they literally do not know what's going on. We have also put in roughly about $43 million for One California, and this is on top of like the $15 million one-time funding, the legal services to the children, continued funding for temporary protected status legal services, and much more. Now, some of the bills that we have actually worked on. Number one is that law enforcement actually needs to ensure that they can be legally identified. So it's called no masks, right? And basically, the goal is to have federal agents from concealing their identities. This is on top of SB 805, which we ensured that there cannot be people that impersonate law enforcement. We saw in LA when there were raids that there were young men that masked themselves up and pretended that they were part of ICE and would actually kidnap people, sexually assault them, and toss them on the street. So there's a lot of laws that have come out of California to protect people based on what we have been seeing. One law that I've personally been sued on, it's AB 495, which is the Family Preparedness Plan. Now, I don't know why this was a big concern for so many people, but what the law allows is that if somebody has a different status, the parents can go to the judge and say, I would like my neighbor, I would like my sister, I would like my family member or loved one to take care of my children who may potentially be American born and raised, to be able to kind of be their guardian temporarily. This actually goes through the current court process. This is not a new process, but it is new in the sense that it allows the parents that are undocumented to prepare their own families for separation of some sort. Um, this has largely, been passed and signed into law, and we have also ensured that ICE cannot go into schools. We have been seeing this. We have been, seeing them go into workforce, and we are trying to ensure that the employer is highly educated on what is going on. So requiring employers to provide workers with information about their constitutional rights. But also, we have tried to ensure that in public colleges and universities and schools overall, that procedures and protections are in place, meaning notifications go out to students. Students can take their classes on Zoom, a wide variety of things. And the goal largely is to protect the individual, ensure that we are not, spreading fear, give every single person resource, whether it is the employer, whether it's the employee, whether it's the individual that has a different status, um, and much more. So I do just want to highlight that these laws have clearly contributed to the fact that we have less people being detained because, one, we are informing people of their rights. Two, we are educating them on how to do things. Three, we are providing legal defense both at a local level and a statewide level. And really just trying to make sure that people are protected and they know that they have rights in the United States and we're defending the Constitution and their legal rights. So that's that in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Um, one specific bill I want to ask you about is AB 1633, the one that would uh, provide or impose a tax on private detention centers operating in California at 50% rate. What can you tell us anything about what the status of that bill is?
Um, We're still going through bills. Anything that costs, so number one, some will determine if it's a fee or a tax. If it's a tax, it's a two-thirds vote. It's very hard to get across the finish line. But it will also most likely go through appropriations. I don't know the status of that particular bill directly, and I just want to flag that. We are in the middle of the legislative process. So at this point, most of the bills have been voted on, but it's going to be reviewed in appropriations. Um, and so may get through, may not, but it will have to come to a final vote.
Now's the
Yeah.
time to put questions in the chat, folks.
The no mask bill in effect or under litigation. So it was actually under litigation the moment it pretty much got signed. And what typically happens is we see a lot of individuals tend to sue the individual authors as well as the state of California, depending on who did the lawsuit. And it's to freeze everything or to get into the courts and say that it's unconstitutional. What we have actually done now is that I actually crossed this bill. Um, we have ensured that regular folks are able to actually sue uh, these individual agents and their agency to basically say, you have violated my rights. Now, law enforcement feels a certain way about this, primarily because they have such immunity doing their work. But I do just want to say that, we've seen how it got kicked out through the courts. We're literally working around it to see what else we can do. And so some of these are largely to stall what's happening and hopefully his term is done and we can beat the Trump administration in the courts and we do win the majority of, or I think we have over 80% win record in the state of California. So we know that some of them are going to get challenged, some of them the courts are going to kick out, but we have been actually shifting and pivoting where we can.
What what help and support can grant organizations?
Can you speak in the mic?
Oh, yeah. What type of support can our groups like ITV um, provide legislators now or the future to support immigrant rights?
Definitely.
Can
So
what can
I
we
think
be
what you
doing?
guys are doing here is absolutely incredibly beautiful. We were one of the first offices to do a Know Your Rights training and forum on Zoom. I had to inform all my colleagues that you cannot have an immigration forum in person, especially if you are advertising, especially if, because there is coordination with ICE once they find out. So we did not want raids. You have to do it on Zoom largely, number one, if you are, informing the public that would get affected. Um, it's about 3 hours. We have a lot of resources, happy to share anything like that. Number one. Number two is the fact that the local legislators, they're all very different and they all have very different communities. When we had the Bay Area potential for raids there, um, you know, I hate to say it like this, most elected officials do not want to show that they don't know what they're doing. Number one, they don't know what's happening, what's the latest, and they want to show that they have some confidence in what they are trying to accomplish. The reality, though, is that the Bay Area is so diverse that we actually need to go deeper into communities. We need more language translations. Any of you guys that have members that can speak multiple languages, that can read and write in multiple languages, and post the Know Your Rights information that we have in those languages. And I know that most of the time California focuses on like the top five languages. We actually have to go further because a raid in Oakland or in San Jose or in San Francisco is actually significantly detrimental to the communities. I will also highlight the fact that, people are trying to protest in Oakland, and the reason why there was a ship being brought is because we have no jurisdiction. It is hard to protest such a thing, and they can fill up those ships, right? So I do want to highlight that we actually have to get our local electeds more involved. I'm going to be very honest. I'm deeply disappointed with some of the efforts and commentary to oppose any type of resolution locally that says we don't want ICE here. We don't want these detention facilities. We don't want these processing facilities. We have to hold our locals accountable because at the end of the day, and I want to highlight this, when we put our money there and we're talking about a community, if you are seeing that the federal government is interested in detaining undocumented individuals or reducing their rights or anything like that, it does affect the community that may all be American born, American citizens. It's their grandfather, it's their grandmother, it's their cousin, it's their aunt, it's their sister, it's their brother, it's their child. And we really need to kind of understand that because it does leave a gaping hole in these families. With that, I also want to flag the fact that this is our constitutional right to have a fair due process, ensure that we are working with immigration attorneys. Spoojmaya obviously has done a lot of work for literally years on this topic, but not letting up. And I have personally been to El Paso, where they do have a detention facility, and they make it seem like it's nice. It's not. They have ankle monitors even on young kids. They do not have it set up where these people can shower properly, wash their hands, hygiene. They are literal cots. Um, it is very problematic. In Texas, I personally saw that a church is the one that had the contract, and everybody was volunteer, and the showers, the sinks, everything was a porta potty outside, and it was in a warehouse, right? Let alone what we see in Juarez, Mexico, which I've also seen with my own eyes. So our immigration system is absolutely broken. I do want to flag that this also translates to H-1B visa holders. because if they are laid off for any reason, um, they have a very limited time to find another sponsor. So immediately after that sponsorship deadline passes, I think like 60 days or something like that, they literally are considered undocumented. So in our district, in our community, there is a lot of people that are affected by immigration status.
We have a question from Spajmi, one of our previous speakers. Spajmi, go ahead.
You. Thank you, Senator Wahab, for your leadership on this. I know that there's a lot of litigation and there's so much, the purpose behind it is to lock everything, like you said, delay it so that it doesn't go process. A lot of times, many communities, whether it's the Latino community or the Middle Eastern community or the Afghan community, they're constantly living in fear. And so, God forbid, there's some sort of a massive raid that they decide to do. It's like we're on a, the president says, the mayor of San Francisco is my best friend, so I'm not going to go to San Francisco, right? We hear the rhetoric. What advice, as an immigration practitioner, being in these spaces, other than the litigation and the legal avenue, if God forbid there was there, what are your thoughts on how the elected officials or the community would organize? I know it's a big ask of a question, but how can we go back to the community and be like, we have some support that we're able to fight it? Because years ago, people were being picked up left and right, even under Obama. And I would just be interested to hear if you have any thoughts on that. Thank you.
Yeah, first and foremost, I do want to highlight that there are actual operations happening here in the Bay Area. In fact, in 2025, in the first 3 months, there was efforts in Fremont, California, and you don't typically think that, right? You're thinking LA, and we're seeing it on in LA. Um, but the reality is that they have been going to Chinese and Indian-owned grocery stores. They have not been able to pick anybody up, so tail between their legs, they walk away. They also do a lot of different operations where they're knocking on doors. We recommend to everybody, don't answer the door. You do not legally need to answer any of their questions. You do not need to legally do any of this. I think that the most that the legal community can do, and I know it's a big ask from the legal community as well, is to provide more resources in the sense that more time, more forums, more conversations, more know your rights, not just a training, because not everybody's going to sit through a training, but easy to understand social media posts. I personally, when the raids were potentially happening in the Bay Area, sat in my office till 3 a.m., literally doing the know your rights information. It was shared over 70,000 times, right? Here in the Bay Area. And it was social media posts, and every single other elected started to copy and paste on their own letterhead, and they shared it as well. And I'll be honest with you, limited in any other language. So I asked friends, can you translate? Can you translate? We also need to know the best practices. So, I have, senator colleagues that their district is literally the highest rated district. And I asked, okay, so when somebody gets picked up, what's the best strategy? How do they find their loved ones? What is the best strategy when a kid is going to school and they may have a parent that is undocumented? What can we tell them just so they know what to do potentially if something happens? That's another piece. We also hold immigration fairs. We've done this in our office. Immigration is not in my jurisdiction. However, we know that there's a lot of people waiting to know what is their status, what is going on. Our local Congress members, and I know we're in a weird situation right now in our district, but they are supposed to help us with being able to know where we are in the process. Lawyers sometimes, they are right now, especially in this moment, they are overworked and they have a lot of clients, but we want to make sure that everybody's able to reach out to a lawyer. I will also highlight the fact that, the legal aid is absolutely necessary. But if education on the legal process is also shared, even with legal students, that is something that we have tried to work with through Berkeley as well. All of the local law schools can help, alleviate some of the workload, but also help translate, help explain, help walk families through. Because the handful of folks that go during these raids and help, on the ground, it's very limited and it's also very exhausting and it takes away from their own lives, their work, their practice, their whatever the case may be. Um, I also think we need to kind of put pressure on the business leaders. That is something I've said for a very long time because it disrupts our entire economy. You know, we have already seen a decline in students going to school just because they are afraid. If not, they are afraid, they also have to potentially work. When their parents are picked up, how do they live? Right? Even if they're 19 years old, let's say they're a full grown adult, right? They are still a kid in so many ways, right? They may be working a minimum wage job. So we need to also ensure that we have resources as a community to help with a month or two of rent to make sure that they're stable enough to figure out what is their next move. And those are the real life human stories that is not really talked about in the press. Um, and I think that we need to kind of go a little bit further of, okay, if there, God forbid, is a raid, if families are picked up and separated, how can we ensure that we are connecting them, including kids who literally don't know what is going on? We need to have more resources, or this is a website you can connect with a loved one or ask a neighbor to connect. But these people who are detained literally are not able to call people, are not able to really communicate what is going on, and much more. So there is a lot to do, even within our own communities, in our own cities, and much more.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any more questions? We're kind of coming to the end of our scheduled time that we had, and we had planned to maybe have some breakout sessions, but we're kind of running out of time on that. I want to introduce all of you on the call that our ITV Immigration Work Group has our monthly meeting this coming Thursday. So look for that on Mobilize, sign up, and we'd love to have you. And we're going to be talking about what we're doing in our localities, in our each of the local cities here in the Tri-Valley. And like we learned from our first speaker, what we can be doing in our hyper local, in our neighborhoods, creating, getting the word out about spreading Know Your Rights and just getting a network of people that we know we can rely on to stand up for the immigrant rights of our neighbors and our loved ones. Um, so with that, I want to thank all four of our speakers. We really appreciate you being here. And I want to introduce or just open it up to anybody here is open and welcome to join our immigration work group. And the first meeting is this coming Thursday.